Welcome to the SAP HANA Academy. My name's Bob, and in this series of videos we'll be going through SAP HANA Vora 1.3. In this series of videos we'll be going through the installation. So in this video what we're going to do is look at how to install SAP HANA Vora on an instance of Hadoop created with Ambari. So just to give you some background, what we've done is instantiated a SUSE Linux server in AWS. On that server we've created users, we've installed various packages in order for us to install Ambari, which we then use to install a small Hadoop cluster on a single node. And in the last video what we ultimately did was test both HDFS and Spark on that single node. We needed to run those tests because we want to be sure that all the prerequisites have been met in order to install SAP HANA Vora. So of course what you do is you go to Service Marketplace and then you'll search by alphabetical index, and I'll go down to H. You don't go down to V for Vora, you go down to HANA Vora. So if I go and look for H and then scroll down, we should see the SAP HANA Vora install files there at the bottom. There we go. So I'll select SAP HANA Vora. This is the version. So if I select it, and then of course you've got versions for Ambari, Cloudera, and obviously MapR. Obviously we're doing Ambari, so I'll select Ambari. So here you can see this is the file that I'd need to place on my Linux server using wget or FTP. And of course these are the different versions depending on what you're going to install. So for us, SUSE. And I'm going to place it in the root directory of my cluster admin user. So if I do an ls, there's nothing there at the moment. What I'll do is I'll go and get that file and place it there now. So here you can see I've downloaded the file. Again, obviously you'll get this from Service Marketplace. So the file I'm using is SAP HANA Vora, and it's a tar.gz file. So once I've done that, it's very simple to install SAP HANA Vora because you actually install and configure using Ambari. All we need to do is firstly extract this file on our Ambari cluster manager, which obviously, because I'm using a single node, is this machine. So where do we extract it to? Well, if I go and do a search of my various services within Ambari, again I'm using 2.4. If I go into this folder, these are the various services available to us when we've installed Ambari. And again, these could be on multiple nodes, but because I'm on the cluster manager or the cluster admin node, all of these services can be installed from this node. So essentially what we'll do with that zip file from the SAP HANA Vora zip file is we'll extract that into a specific folder within our Hadoop services within Ambari. So to do that, I'm going to run the following command. So just to explain how the command works, I'm running a sudo tar -xvzf. I'm taking that file, which again is here at the root of my cluster admin user, and I'm going to, with a -c, place it into that folder which we listed here. And as you can see at the moment, there is no Vora folder. It takes a few seconds to extract. You can see it's installing lots of content. And again, if you've seen my Vora 1.2 videos, you would see that you're actually installing multiple services within Ambari. The difference now, if I run that same command as before, we only have one service which we manage in Ambari, because now in SAP HANA Vora 1.3, a tool is used to manage and configure the services, which is separate from using Ambari. So now what you should see here is Vora-manager if you do an ls of your services folder. So the only thing that you need to do now after doing that install is to restart both the agent and also the Ambari agent and also the Ambari server. So we can do it with these two commands. So firstly what I'll do is I'll restart the agent with this command. So I'm doing a sudo usr sbin ambari-agent restart. And then when that's executed, we can use a very similar command to restart the server, which is an ambari-server restart. So it'll take a few seconds to restart. And what will happen is while it's restarting, The Ambari will become aware of the additional Vora Manager service which will be available for us to install within Ambari. So I'm back in Safari, and what you'll have noticed is because we've restarted Ambari, I have to re-log in. So again, the default login is admin. Takes a few seconds to log in. And again, like I said before, if your servers here are red triangles, all you'll need to do here is click on stop all maybe and then start all. Again, before you can proceed, you must make sure that all these services are green circles with white tick marks in them. Additionally, if you want to secure your Ambari, if you go to Ambari and go to Manage Ambari, here with users, you can go and change the password if you want here, but I'm not going to bother. Okay, so now that we know we've actually restarted Ambari server and the agent, we now need to install SAP HANA Vora. So again, unlike SAP HANA Vora 1.2, we only actually install one service. So if I go and add the services here, and then if we scroll down, what we should see is a Vora Manager service which we can add. This is the version that I'm using. And what you'll notice is if you've used Vora 1.2 is that we only now install one service, which is the Vora Manager. So I'll select that Vora Manager service and then I'll click Next. Again, if this is a multi-node cluster, you can choose which server the service goes on. I'm going to put it on a single node, so we can just click on Next. Now this is quite important. What we need in SAP HANA Vora 1.3 is to install three things on, for my example, on the single node. We install what's called the Vora Manager, or the master. We install a Vora Manager worker, and also we install the Vora client tools. So the manager will be installed anyway as part of the service, but you need, if on a single node, you need to install the Vora Manager worker and also the client. Now there'll be another chalkboard video coming up in this series which discusses what happens if you have a multi-node cluster. So here I'll click on Next because again it's my single node. The next step is you can configure or customize this service. So if I go to my advanced Vora management config, these are all the configurations that you can change. The only two things we have to change are the default Java home and also the Spark home. So to find out where your Spark home is, of course we said it in a previous video, but this is where my Spark home is. What you might need to be aware of is if I make sure that the version number is correct. So if you just go to USR HDP and click Tab, depending on when you're doing the install, your version might be slightly different. So I'm installing this version, so I'll just ls to make sure that the folder exists. And then I'll do the same for my JDK. Now this should be quite standard, it's 1.8.0._60, but again, it's a good idea to check the path running an ls command just to make sure that those paths are there. So of course I'll paste in that Spark home here, and then underneath I'll paste in the Java home like so. So that's the only thing that you need to change. Other things are of course optional in case you want to put the folders, the data directories or log directories on a separate mount. So once you've done that, all I need to do is click on Next. You'll get this message about warnings for Ambari alerts, just don't worry about that, click on Proceed anyway. You'll have a summary of what's going to be installed on this single node. I'll click on Deploy. And then it'll take around 10 seconds to actually install again the Vora Manager Master, the Vora Manager Worker, and also the Vora Client Tools. So we can see that it installed okay. So then I'll click on Next. I'll click on Complete. You might need to restart a few of the services. It'll warn you which you need to restart. If you do, all you need to go is go to Service Actions and restart all. For us, we don't need to start, but here you will see the Vora Manager. And again, what you're looking for is that you have a green circle with a white tick in it. And if I click on Vora Manager, what you'll see here is that you need to have the Vora Manager Master started, the Vora Manager Worker started, and the Vora Client. So what we've done in this video is we've looked at installing the Vora Manager service using Ambari on a Hadoop system. What we're going to do in the next video is look at some post-installation steps. which are needed to ensure that it's installed properly. Again, this will enable us to test our installation of Vora. So we'll do that in the next video.